But I really had this moment when I realised I could combine my core feminist principles with my job, which I hadn't really thought about before. So I became really interested in women's health, and so I decided that I actually wanted to shift my focus to women's cancers that were massively understudied. So I chose very actively to look at gynecological cancers, ovarian cancer and endometrial cancer, and realised then, became just hugely more aware of some of the issues around gender inequity across STEM, but particularly across medicine, but also about the types of diseases that are studied. I hadn't sort of realised that as a more junior investigator, as someone just thinking that science was equitable and that we weren't biased in any way. A bit of a realisation that actually no, science is performed by scientists, and scientists have their own biases and views about this, and as a woman in science I should be focusing my effort on helping other women. So that was a big change for me.
You know, I think when I retrospectively look at my career and try and join the dots, it seems like a very well thought out plan. And the truth is it was never anything like that. And the turning points have always existed. And from the day that I stepped out of uni to even right now, where they're defined by the things that I know I don't want to do. When I finished uni as an engineer, I knew that I didn't want to work in a corporate. And so then, much like Harini here, deciding what kind of risks I wanted to take to determine the pathway. I had a real keen interest in tech, and so I ended up in tech startups, but I also had a keen interest in philanthropy and non-profits. And the journey has happened that I've now been able to merge the two. But that never existed. In many ways, it was just navigating the world, knowing what I didn't want to do.
Did you see yourself headed for a corporate career at some point then?
I knew I didn't want to work for a corporate. Okay. I knew I could work with corporates or align with them, but I never wanted to be employed by one.
Okay. All right. Hayley.
So I guess I came from a slightly non-traditional side of things. So I guess my turning point came quite young. My dad had a farming accident, and we were based 500 kilometres from anywhere where you needed to get serious help. So I was out in the paddock with Dad, and his hand got stuck in this auger. Awful injury. Anyway, young, driving across the paddock, trying to get Dad back to the house, and it was at that point that changed me to go and do physiotherapy, science, 12 years of university, to see what I could do to help these people, with very strong focus on rural, remote, getting people who can't access health for whatever reason, cost or distance to this level of healthcare they need, to see what I could do there. So after I studied physiotherapy, I was looking at tools that I could innovate. I found one in my last year of uni. I didn't study anything I had actually studied. I left, I became an entrepreneur, and started the company from those points that sort of collate together.
Did it take anything for you to feel that you could do that? Because, I mean, it's such a huge step. That's a particularly big leg to go from you're studying physiotherapy to I'm going to be an innovator. I think that, yeah. What made you think that could be you?
One pivoting point, I think as a female, I question my worth. Who am I to do this? I'm just a farm girl. How do I go and create this? I had at the time, one of the things I thought of is, we need some funding to do this as well. We had, my partner at the time actually passed away. Sounds a big story, but passed away, and I had an inheritance, and that's how I started the company. So I had around $80,000, and I could have, I guess, put it on a house, but that was a pivoting point for me to go and do something with it. So really practical pivot.
Again, that's a big one. Yeah, lots of risks. So just before we get into a few more questions, and if you have any questions that you want to ask, I will make sure that we've got some time at the end for people to ask those questions. But I just thought we could quickly go through, and maybe everyone could share something that they really love about their work right now.
Yeah. Sure. So at Antler is an early stage venture capital firm. It's also a startup generator program. So what I love about my job is that we enable aspiring founders by removing some of the pain points and the roadblocks that they generally face. So from introducing them to their co-founder, helping them find their idea, and a panel of amazing advisors that they can tap into to validate their idea really quickly, as well as providing them a clear path to funding and access to capital. So that's what we do, and it's something that resonated really well with me, and I was amazed that I could be part of helping the Sydney startup ecosystem. So that's what I love about my job.
Great. Maybe Raji will fix it up a little bit.
If I had to think of like one particular thing, I run a series of social enterprises, and one of the verticals is hospitality, and we have a social enterprise cafe right in the heart of One Martin Place. And Martin Place, from the beginning of, I guess, colonialism, has been sort of the financial central, the centre of trade. And here we are in the Macquarie building with a beautiful social enterprise cafe making a difference every day. And that's a statement for us to show that business can be done differently.
So what's the cafe called?
It's called Portal, Portal.
Okay. Michelle. I guess for me at Uber, it is working in a global environment for a product or brand that everybody knows what we do. Flying cars.
Flying cars. Everyone has a story to tell. Everyone has engaged with Uber or Uber Eats. Angela was telling me about feeling like she has permission to get Uber Eats on a regular basis because she feels connected to the company. I'd given her permission. But it's true. Like, I used to work in places that were obscure and did obscure things, and now everyone is like, I caught an Uber yesterday, my driver, and I'm like, tell it to ring the number. No, we're here to listen. No, it's really great to have. It's really great to work somewhere that has just really, really taps into a community need. And I remember taxis before Uber, and so it's a company I believe in that needs to exist.
Yeah, I did mention to Michelle that I'm at home with the newborn at the moment, and I have been hitting up the Uber Eats app a little bit. So, and I guess that's what happens when you work at Uber, that someone will instantly come and tell you that how they're using those kinds of services.
Yeah, it's a good story. It's something that you can kind of get excited about. It's a good story to tell. It's good to be part of that.
All right, Caroline.
I think for me, it's actually meeting other just incredible women in STEM in the last few years. So the book club that Angela mentioned, so STEMinist Book Club, I can see a couple of members in the audience, like Annie, just came from me actually embracing all of the parts of my personality and all the things I was interested in, instead of kind of thinking that meant that I wasn't a serious scientist. So I am a feminist and I love reading books. And so it was just through Twitter and realising that there were other women out there that were kind of reading similar things and that had similar interests that this idea formed. And now we have this really incredible global network of women where I'm going to Atlanta for a cancer conference in a couple of months, but there's now an Atlanta STEMinist book club that meets up regularly there. So I've already got this posse of women that I can go and have a beer with and talk about careers in STEM that would not have happened before. So, I mean, the research is incredible, but the women are the best part of my life at the moment. Yeah.
Was that a deliberate move for you, setting up that group?
No.
Because,
No. I mean, I can sort of pretend that it was this very strategic move, but it wasn't at all. Yeah. It was actually just through seeing that a professor at Sydney Uni, Renee Ryan, who's an incredible researcher, posted on Twitter that she was reading this book that I had just finished reading. And so I knew her from Twitter, but I'd never met her. And I messaged her and said, we should have a book club. We should catch up and have a wine. And she said, yeah, that's a great idea. So then I started a Twitter account, the STEMinist Book Club Twitter account that day, and it just snowballed. And it's turned into this really great thing where I've met really great people. And also the authors. I mean, I've now met most of the authors of the books that we've read, and they're thrilled by it. And that is pretty cool as a nerd scientist to hang out with great journalists and authors. So yeah.
All right, Hayley.
I love on the back of that as well. I'm part of a group called the World Economic Forum. So every year, about 200 people from around the globe are chosen as young global leaders, and we're charged with the task, I guess, of identifying what's up in the world and what we can fix, and each year we meet to discuss and change that. So we just 4 or 5 weeks ago, I was at Harvard University, and we got to meet these incredible professors who were handing out their books that they'd just written, one on equality with Iris Bonet's What Works. So those opportunities, that only came from being the CEO or founder of Halo Medical Devices, and it's just opened my world up, and it's just so inspiring, that network. So I think it would be that, yeah.
Okay, great. Well, I mean, I talked about some of the stats at the top of the conversation. So we know that you're all working in male-dominated fields still. I want to find out if you've seen what that personally feels like, if you have found yourself in situations where you've been one of the only women in the room, and how you've kind of thought about that, how you've maybe gotten through that, if you needed to feel like you needed to get through it, or what strategies you might have for other people who find themselves in those sorts of situations. Caroline, you're...
Yeah, that's a daily occurrence for me, so I'm not sure that I have quite figured out the best strategy, but I think certainly having a network of women that aren't in the room to bounce ideas off, or even if I have had a horrendous experience in some sort of meeting and I can get on Slack and send them a message and they can respond back with some strategies of what I could do next time, or even just to vent that, yeah, that really sucks, and they're being dicks. So it's useful in that way, but also action. I mean, I'm very action-oriented, so yes, women in STEM is an enormous issue, so therefore I've always been involved in networks and committees that actually tackle some of these issues in higher education. So I'm the chair of what's called MEDIC, which is the Medicine, Equity, Diversity and Inclusion Committee, and so we actually do things to try to change some of the structures that are particularly difficult for women in my field. So things like regular meetings being held at the hospital. The meeting I go to is on every Monday from 5 to 7 p.m. I mean, not exactly particularly helpful. How we rate and rank people, how we undergo promotion processes, a whole raft of things that we're looking at across the higher education sector. But being involved and being a part of the change makes some of the frustrations a little easier to swallow. Yeah.
Is the Slack channel with external people or internal people?
I have multiple, and both. Yeah, both.
To see that Slack conversation, but no, so it sounds like also you've deliberately put yourself in situations, I guess, where you will come across other women, and where you will build up a network of people who you can reach out to, who can be part of these Slack chat groups or whatever it is. So,
and also on Twitter. I mean, that's the other thing. The book club, that network of women, we don't just talk about books, we talk about solutions and strategies for this. And so that's really useful as well, because none of this there's no need for us to reinvent the wheel. There's things that have been done in corporations to address some of these issues really successfully, and higher education or medical research might be 20 years behind that. And there's no reason for us to be like pondering, oh, what's the best way to do this, when actually there's evidence out there about what works. There's that fantastic book, for example, that you just mentioned. So that's been nice to actually connect with people overseas that have successfully shifted some of this and learn from them.
Harini.
So I've definitely been in situations and meetings where I was the only woman in the room, and I think at that point it's important to remember that your voice is important and it's as equal as anybody else in the room, and to say out your thoughts and whatever your ideas are. But on the action side, I would say to get more involved in the recruiting and the hiring process so that you can hire more diverse teams, as it's been proven that it's beneficial both for the teams and the company itself, because diverse teams tend to come up with innovative and creative products and solutions. So getting involved in that side of recruitment and helping being a champion for that from internally, from within your organization, is also very key.
Raji, what about you, especially having studied engineering, and we heard that stat. Did you say that when you were studying?
Yeah, definitely. And I had gone to an all-girls high school, and then all of a sudden I was in an all-boys scenario. And when I graduated, which isn't that long ago, just a little over 10 years, I was one of 22 women in a class of 200. So, yeah, it was just roughly 1 in 10. And so, you kind of got used to sort of being surrounded, being the only woman in the room in that scenario for 4 or 5 years. So I think it's back to Harini's point about holding your own in that room. Like, you know, you use your skill set, you hold your own. When I'd finished university, I had joined groups, much to Caroline's point, like Women in Engineering, Engineers Australia, etc. And it wasn't until a couple of years later that I realised that the opportunities I took advantage of had been curated probably 15 years earlier by a woman named Dr. Bronwyn Evans, who was my mentor. And so I also think when you are given an opportunity or you have some kind of success, you're also given responsibility in the same hand. And so I also felt, much like what Caroline's saying as well, the responsibility to ensure that change happened, that, you know, engaging with high schools and ensuring that people understood what STEM actually meant, removing that fear of, oh my goodness, I don't know how to do maths or physics, therefore I cannot participate, or coding is too hard, or whatever it might be. Engaging with parents who would have no experience. For me, engineering was in my family. Like, I had a parent who was an engineer, and so I was already, you know, subconsciously even exposed to what engineering and STEM was, but there are tons of families who don't have that, and therefore careers advisors or teachers who don't have that. So there's just that lack of information that I felt was important to ensure that myself and my peers took it to the next level and ensured the next generation could come through.
Okay, I mean, I might move on to another and go to the next question for both Michelle and Hayley, because we are here to talk about like future-proofing your career. We're learning a lot of strategies for that, I think, just through this general discussion. But do you have any ideas for what women can do or perhaps should be doing if they really want to think about how they can future-proof their career and make sure that their skills are staying and remaining relevant well into the future? Especially when we're talking about automation and flying cars and things that I think that coming out of places like Uber. So I might start with you, Michelle.
Yeah, I mean, I was actually thinking about this before. I just had a board meeting with the Internet of Things Alliance Australia, and I had to interview for that board role. And I had to research what the Internet of Things is. And it occurred to me that, and it occurs to me now, that I think it is just knowing that if you don't know, chances are loads of other people don't, and it's okay, you can learn, and you're not on a path. The world is not going to get ahead of you so much that you can't just stop and read and look and learn and try and make a conscious effort to understand what's the tech space or whatever's happening around you, and try and consciously learn and be part of it. I'm not the most sort of tech savvy person in the world, but I know that my unique contribution is that I can turn complex things into plain English. That's my contribution. That's what I do, and so that's my offering. And I guess how I try and future-proof my career is by doing that in more and more complex fields. So going and learning about the thing like the Internet of Things that not many people can really understand or get their head around what that actually is, and turn it into something that people can more easily understand. So bring my skills to something a bit more, I guess, as the world evolves, a bit more complicated. So
it obviously worked. You got that board position. So Hayley, do you have any ideas for that, on how anything maybe that have you thought about future-proofing your career? Well, it sounds like you've maybe thought more about the things you want to develop, I guess, rather than how to protect your career during that process.
Yeah, exactly. So ours, building technology, it's always a race to build the next thing and be the best and make sure we're getting something out there. The way I've done it, I think, is very much I love the rule of whoever you surround yourself with, you really do become. So building those incredible networks to make sure you are at the forefront. And, whether you're male or female, at the end of the day, you've got to have good skills and you've got to show the evidence that you can do it. And I think for me, I've done a lot of work on, self-worth and making sure, I guess, I feel I can add value and know where my value is, and, to be very certain in that. But that took me a lot of years. And to be frank, I still do, often podcasts and mentors like Brené Brown. I listen to all of that to make sure I stay up there, make sure I can present my skills and present as I need, when I need. So,
I need to ask you about going on the New Inventors. So how did you do anything to, I guess, think about your presentation skills for that, or what was that experience like in terms of preparing for?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we later did Shark Tank, and that was a bit, that was way more relaxed. So ABC New Inventors, when it was around, that was my first time on TV, and I live audience as well. I was so nervous. My teeth were chattering. So I was so nervous. So the preparation level was not great. That's something I need to do. It's one of my things I need to work on to be good. I perhaps practiced once or twice. I spoke to the producers. We had driven up from... driven up to sort of do it in the studios that day. Mum and Dad were in the audience, kind of thing, and off we went. So it was a bit green. But when we did Shark Tank, much more prepped. By that stage, I knew all the judges. I was in alumni with them as well. So when I turned up, it was very much, well, this is what I've got, and spoke very true to what I knew the company could offer. So a bit more relaxed.
Okay, Raji, I want to ask about your path to CEO, because you mentioned you didn't see yourself in a corporate. Did you see yourself as a CEO one day?
I don't think I would have known what I would be the CEO of, but I enjoyed leadership roles. And so I kind of reverse engineered from that concept. I had started my first job straight out of uni was in a tiny little tech startup. And maybe a year or two in, the CTO at the time said, look, your intention is to go into leadership management, so use this time early in your career to hone your specialist skills, your technical skills, because one day, if you are the CEO, you won't be necessarily coding or doing anything, but you will need to converse with developers in your dev team and understand how to design the product, etc. I knew that CEOs reported to boards, and I thought, well, I don't even know what board directors do or how they think, so the best way to learn is to get on boards and be a board director myself, and that way I will know when the time comes to be a CEO what they're thinking and what I should be doing. I was really conscious of, back to what Hayley was saying about building your networks. You are definitely, the average of the people that you surround yourself with. Building on skill sets such as understanding different people's personalities. The activities that I did that were outside of my day job, everything in the non-profit space, that's where I learned to fundraise, which became really useful when it came to raising capital. That's where I learned marketing skills, and even though I never did the marketing, I understood how to converse on that. So it was really just kind of, and I don't want to make it sound like I said before, like I've perfectly planned this. It wasn't like that at all. It was very much so going, what is it that I'm really good at? What is it that I don't know that I just need to get a sense of that I can then shape my way through here?
Harini, just moving on from mention of networks there. You mentioned before that you arrived in Australia just 2 years ago, and your career's kind of taken you all over the world. So it feels like you'd sort of be starting out in every new jurisdiction. Is that correct? What do you do from scratch to find your network when you have to start basically again in each city that you land in?
Right. So it is a bit hard to find your network again and again or in different cities. A little bit of backstory on that. So when I started as a software engineer, I initially thought, okay, if I just code away and create the product in almost like a black box kind of a setting, and that's good enough. That's good enough to prove my worth. But later on, quickly realized that mindset is wrong. It's more about actually marketing what you do and telling your story in a meaningful way so that others understand, and building that community and network. So over time, I started doing more of that, and as and when I moved to different cities, actively reached out to different organizations and different communities there. So to build the networks within an organization as well as outside, that was what I found was important. So my move to Australia itself was through the networks channel. So one of my mentors in BlackRock, I kind of told that I have been in BlackRock for so long, but I would like to get a global experience. And when the opportunity came in, they kind of put me in touch, and that kind of happened. So I guess networks definitely help in improving your career, taking it to the next level, as well as making sure you're in the right track.
Did it feel like a big risk moving to Australia?
Yeah, it did. So everyone and their aunts, everyone was telling me that leaving US is like a wrong career move.
You left New York, didn't you?
Yeah, I lived in New York. So everyone had that opinion that US is the place to be for technology, especially like being an engineer. But I guess moving to Australia or like Asia Pacific region opened up a different kind of leadership opportunity for me, which might not have been there in the US. So that's like more like a calculated risk.
So leadership opportunities you might not been able to have access to
in the US.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I got into the role of developing and building the Asia Pac data engineering team. So I got into that head role here, versus that role was already taken by someone else in the US. So it's more difficult to get into. Yeah. So when you kind of take that risk, it opens up new opportunities.
Okay. Caroline, so science by training, and you're now working in medicine as well. And we talked about this, about adding the additional M onto STEM, which is very important. So, and that the STEMinist book club does have the 2 M's. So we are launching a newsletter without the second M because we're launching a different newsletter that will focus on women in medicine. So what do you see as some of the key challenges that are similar across all STEM fields as well as medicine? And what have you seen that's been particularly helpful in addressing some of those challenges for women and girls to really succeed in those industries?
I think what's interesting when we lump all STEM in together is that the focus becomes very much on attracting young girls and women into STEM careers, and that's absolutely important, and it's very much about having role models and being able to expose younger children to what an incredible career in STEM can be and how diverse that can be and how you can look like the people on this panel and actually have a really rewarding career. So that's a huge part of it, and that's still a huge battle in some of the letters of STEM, so very much in technology, engineering and maths, I would say, but it's not the issue at all in the S or the second M. So in science and medicine, it's not a pipeline issue at all, and if one more person tells me that, I may punch them in the face. We've had plenty of women studying medicine, studying biomedical science, studying life sciences for 30 or 40 years. We have a majority of our undergraduates, of our postgraduates, of our early career researchers are women across all those fields, but where there's been less focus is as to why they don't progress. And so why the systems are actually set to work against them. So I think as much as there are similarities across STEM in that they're all, in my view, curiosity driven and about problem solving and really innovative, rewarding careers, the issues to tackle are quite unique. And so I think remembering that is important. One last thing that I'll say though is that thing about networks and about reaching out to other people. So at my university, I chair this medicine equity committee. I get the most useful feedback, and the most fantastic meetings I have are with the chairs of the science and the engineering committee, because the three of us, we call ourselves the trifecta, we all have different battles, but we all can help each other so much by working together. And so I do think there is power in collaboration, but you also don't get too far by lumping it all in together.
And yet it's always being lumped in together, isn't it?
It's not a word. STEM is not a word, right? So.
Yeah, but I mean, it strikes me as all of you've had such different careers, and yet here we are talking all under this banner of STEM. We could be having a women in tech panel, or a women in science panel, or a women in engineering panel, and perhaps we will get to that, hopefully. So that would be where we'd like to go. Hayley, I wanted to just ask you, I think you mentioned you're 500 kilometres from where you grew up. Where were you?
Yes, Mount Many Peaks. It's a real place, but it's just south of Albany. We're the most southern tip of Western Australia.
Okay, wow. Okay. So can I ask about, some of this conversation, the context of women who live remotely, regionally, what kind of challenges are they additionally facing if they're trying to get into these fields? Because we're talking a lot about networks particularly, and that's obviously quite different to be forming, those in-person networks in areas like that.
Yeah, that's such a great question. There's rural networks for women building now, but often they're not specific in your industry. And I think when you're trying to solve a problem, particularly in tech or anything STEM, you really need to be working, collaborating with people who are doing the same thing, obviously. So I know when I sort of started out, I was obviously young and in the rural side of things, but understanding the rural woman as being one, it's a priority thing. The community you're surrounded with, and going back to the point of, you know, you are the sum of the five around you, the community is not focused on entrepreneurism. It's focused on preserving the community. So it's the activities and the conversations that you have at the local tennis club or the shearing shed are not about technology or how can I make this better, or if it is, it's a very quick fix, low cost fix to something, you know, that the shearer might do or something. But the conversations are different. So that in itself is a barrier. It doesn't challenge you. But now we certainly do have different networks that are opening up slowly. Yeah.
I'll just say the final question that I have, and then I'll go to if anyone on the floor has any questions. Otherwise, I will have other questions because we've got about 10 minutes left. Michelle, you've crossed over into tech, and I think this is interesting because I think, you know, there's this. It's kind of a career change in a way, even though you're still doing the same line of work in comms and marketing, but it has been a career change in terms of changing industry. What has that been like? And for other women who might be interested in making that kind of shift, what would you suggest?
Well, I think actually Hayley has inspired my suggestion, which is, you know, those conversations that people might have in like maybe the shearing shed. Though I've never had a conversation in a shearing shed, but something to put on the list. Is, you know, technology is supposed to enable. Like, it's not supposed to be something that just exists for the sake of it. It's supposed to do something to make life easier or better, or, you know, facilitate some improvement in some way. So I guess taking that principle is how I got the job at Uber. Like, I had to go through 8 to 10 interviews to get it, firstly, and those interviews ranged from, you know, written tasks to deep dives to presentations, the whole gamut. With everybody all the way up to the Vice President in San Francisco. But I think the reason I was able to make the transition is by taking sort of that principle that technology enables. It isn't a thing on its own. It's supposed to integrate with society and actually work for people. So that meant that I could make sense of it as a comms and marketing person, I guess. It is different culturally. It's different from other industries that I've worked in. The startup culture is incredibly, we would say, agile. It could be frantic, could be other words to describe it, but it is incredibly fast. The time from idea to execution is a matter of days or weeks, not months and quarters, and that is a really big shift in terms of industry, but the principles are the same from my perspective. And I try and just bring, like we always say, the job of a comms person at Uber is to bring the outside voice into the room inside. And you know, Uber can be a little bit of a bubble, as most tech companies can sometimes be, and my job is to bring the outside voice in, and that hasn't changed regardless of what industry I work in. But I think the job to do is to, you know, to convince people as you're going through that interview process that's what you're bringing to the organisation. That's what you'll bring in. I think it's been. I'm old at Uber. I always say that. Like, I've gone from being at the Australian Institute of Company Directors, where I was super young and really, you know, vibrant. I am now. They say to me, "Someone of your experience." I'm like, "Thank you," you know, and that was a hard pill to take for a while. But now, I sort of relish in, you know, I'm much calmer than some of the youngsters, and I've got a different perspective to offer, and the energy is contagious. So that's been a really rewarding thing too. So.
Okay, so any questions from the audience? Okay, we've got one here. We just need to get you a microphone.
Hi, just want to say thank you, and what an impressive panel you guys all are, and it's been really valuable I'll speak for everyone in this room. My question right now specifically is for Antler. about some of the founders that you see come through. Do you see mostly men coming through as the founders? And if so, what do you do at Antler to try and increase the number of female founders coming through your doors?
Yeah. So we definitely try actively to seek diverse founders coming into the mix. So we reach out to specific women's organizations and stuff like that. So with the current cohort, we have 70 founders and we have like 24% women, which is quite high for startup ecosystem in general. But yeah, I agree there is a lot more work to be done, and we have upcoming cohorts in January, June, and so on for the next couple of years, and our goal mainly is to attract more diverse teams, attract more women into the cohort.
Do you do anything intentionally to try and make that happen?
Yeah, we kind of get ourselves associated and do collaborative events with some of the women's organizations and even like Women Who Code and organizations like that to attract women engineering talent as well as business consulting and people from different backgrounds.
Do we have...
Hi, my name is Jessie. I'm really enjoying this conversation. Thanks a lot to all you ladies. My question is specifically for Caroline. You touched on before that you saw specific barriers within the medicine and science field for women. I'm wondering if you could elaborate on some of the issues that you saw.
Have you got all night? Look, I think traditionally medicine has been built by men for men. It's also a very hierarchical structure, medicine, so it's very much about the fellow is reporting to the registrar or who's reporting to who in the hierarchy. And so it's very traditional, let's say that. And it's very traditional in that it was primarily a man and probably with a wife at home that was looking after perhaps the rest of the person's life. And so that's changed now. So we now have all these women in training, we have all these women working in hospitals, we have all these women working in medical research that have the added labour, let's say, of these additional tasks that they are trying to fit into a structure that is not really based around that. So it's very much about workload, working hours, meeting times, as I mentioned, just the constant expectation. In my field, I always have an interesting kind of moral dilemma in that we're working on cancer research and everyone sort of falls over themselves with, oh, how amazing you're a cancer researcher, it's so wonderful that you're doing that. But also, I don't want to work 7 days a week because I'll get burnt out. And so dealing with the issue of not feeling that you're not passionate and enthusiastic and committed to medical research, that actually you do need time out for reading a novel or spending time with your family and friends or exercise or those types of things. That's not generally the model that is rewarded in medical research or in science. The model that is rewarded is the person that works, honestly, 6 to 7 days a week and very aggressively and very competitively, and I see them all around me and they're not great role models of what I would like to be, and I don't think they're great role models for the next generation and our students either. So I very actively try to be very open about my behaviour, and I've got 2 small children under the age of 5 and I have photos of them around and I say that I'm going to pick them up and I go and do things with them and I bring them into the office because it is still remarkable in my field.
And we'll go to these final 2 questions. So we'll get to this.
Hello everyone, my name is Poka from Mongolia, and thank you for organizing this wonderful event. As an international student, and I'm just starting from the bottom line, the real bottom, so it's really inspiring to get this motivation from you guys. And my question also goes to the Caroline, because I graduated medical school back in Mongolia, and same as the previous question, how to deal with the burnout? Because the reason why I moved out and tried to open myself in the big world is because I burn out in the medical field. Oh my God, it's way too much to deal with. And so you are managing the big research, and how do you manage this?
I think because I'm in a position of privilege now where I can actually control that, and I can make some active change, but it was much harder when I was more junior because there was just an expectation that you keep up with everybody else. It's highly competitive to get grants and to show that you are moving along with everybody else. So honestly, I didn't have that balance right earlier in my career. I had to put in the hard yards, as you would say, work incredibly hard. Other things were left on the back burner. It's only now that I have a little bit of more of a secure position and that privilege and that power to actually do that. But I can make sure that my team doesn't experience the same situation that I did, and I can make them aware of the opportunities for flexible work, aware of the opportunities. I mean, I think like all these people on the panel are obviously incredibly smart. I'm sure all work incredibly hard, but it's about working really strategically and really smart. It's not just hours in, product out. That doesn't work. I think you learn that eventually. I'm seeing some head nods, yeah.
Okay, another. Oh, we've got lots of questions. Okay, so the one in the back corner there.
Oh, okay. Good evening, I'm Jackie. So I feel like there's a bit of a common thread in the last two questions, but so I'm from South Africa and I've just stepped away from clinical medicine as a result of feeling a lot of that burnout in very difficult public hospitals and working circumstances. And in that position also, as Hayley mentioned, seeing a lot of people that didn't have access to healthcare services because of rural conditions and their socioeconomic status and things like that. And I've actually ventured into doing an MBA. So I'm in that position where I think Raji alluded to, where I'm trying to navigate where it is I want to go, because the impetus for me to step away was to try and make a difference to the lives of not only my female colleagues, but also the male colleagues, the nursing staff, all the ancillary healthcare people that I could see were suffering because of a systemic problem, and I just wasn't motivated enough to stay in it. So really, I think my question is, and it's a bit of almost like self-searching, is it's not so much like how to future-proof your career, because one's career is not like a stationary once off, I'm going to decide it. Is it more perhaps asking ourselves, how do we future-proof ourselves to retain a core value set, like we want to make a difference, but without compromising our sense of balance and happiness in life? And yet still be successful. So there's all these things, and it's something that I've really been mulling over for a long time, and I've just seen it come up in so many ways in this conversation. So I just wanted to, maybe it's also a good way to wrap up.
That is such a great question, and that's exactly what I was going to say. So I think it is an excellent way to wrap up. So I'd like everyone to address the question if they can.
That is such a great question, and I think one of the things that helped me particularly is to learn that there is no balance. What you do at work, if it's the right thing in terms of, whatever you're going to start and move into, is a continuation of life. You must protect your time and the fundamentals of good sleep. Meditation is a huge one. This came up, so imagine 70 people in a room at Harvard University, 7 a.m. in the morning, we'd all meet, and there was an Arab chief, we had 2 billionaires, one owned an island. It was just a strange group of people, right? So we were examining what everyone's morning routines were and how they preserve themselves, and you put that so well. One of the things is meditation, and that might be just putting on a podcast and going for your walk. Like, really protect those things, because that's when you need to let your brain unwind and get creative. You need to look after your health so you can do whatever you need to do. So going back to the fundamentals, it's hard work. Whatever you're about to embark on is going to be hard, but in terms of the future-proofing yourself, get those things right. Yeah.
Raji.
I think you're on the money when you talk about protecting your core values. Use your values as your true north to determine where it is you're going to go, who you're going to engage with, what it is you're going to do. That should never change. And I think also
you often hear people talk about how much, they're looking forward to the next holiday, the next getaway. Try and build a life that you don't want to get away from, that you actually enjoy the day-to-day because of the things that you do. And it might be family-related or it might be work-related. It doesn't matter. Like, as long as you pick things and you pursue things that just give you that joy. The self-care component that Hayley talked about is non-negotiable. So for me and my team, Tuesdays and Thursdays are work-from-home days. And, people often ask me, how do you know your team are not, going to the gym or having a nap? And yeah, they probably are, but so what? It's about getting the tasks done. And if they need a nap in the middle of the day because they can do the work afterwards, so be it. Half the team, there's one person on the team whose brain, I believe, doesn't switch on till 1 p.m. It's not worth him coming in at 9 a.m. Whereas there are other people on the team who by 3, 4 p.m. it's over. They want to go to the gym. They want to just tap out then. But they'd be happily early starters. So this whole 9 to 5, work 24/7, do the number of hours isn't the future of work, and it isn't about future-proofing careers or your life. It is really about coming back to what is the essence of being human, and amplifying that in a world where automation and things are going to increase. Hold on to the essence of being human.
I think for me, one of the kind of perverse outcomes of not having any role models that look like me is that now I just think, oh, well, fuck it. I'll just do what's me. So instead of when I was more junior thinking, oh, well, that's the model of the person that's getting the medical research grant, or that's the professor of medicine, that's what they look like, and that's how they act, and they dress this way, and they speak this way, and they work this way, realising that that actually didn't align with my values at all, so exactly what everyone's been saying, and then instead of trying to fit myself into a mould that didn't fit, actually embracing all of that and realising now that that is actually where my strength lies and where I'm valued. And so people talk about this all the time, right? So if you focus on your weaknesses all the time, if you're kind of weak at something naturally, you put a huge amount of effort into it, you might get to average even if you work your entire life on it. Whereas if you focus on your strengths, your natural strengths, and put that combined effort into that, you'll be absolutely outstanding. So for me, that's been a really important lesson, and it also makes it so much more enjoyable, right? So, yeah.
So one of the things that I actually constantly remind myself is that my career is more than my current job or the project that I'm working on. So one of those days when you kind of keep working on your project and before you realize it's like 9 p.m. So it's very important to remember the schedule and timing and get out of your job and workplace to do something you like and maybe come back to it later when you're more refreshed. So I think that kind of setting the routine and, self-care, as you mentioned, is more important. Yeah.
Finally, Michelle. So many words of wisdom. No. Look, I think for me, I was just reflecting as everybody was speaking about, I've got an 8-year-old, but I remember coming back from maternity leave, and that time being on leave was the hardest time. Like, I've never worked harder than the 6 months of having a newborn. And then you come back to work, and I remember sitting at the computer thinking, this is actually pretty easy. I can go to the toilet whenever I want, I can eat salad and no one's going to interrupt me, I can read the Herald online, and it was great. And that had this weird impact on me in that it made me think that every minute of every day needed to mean something. And so, people always ask me, how do you do all these things, outside of work and at work? And I think it's because I became hyper aware of every minute mattering. And if I was going to go to work and spend 9 hours there, then I really had to do something every time when I was there. And it had to do something that mattered to me and that made a difference to me. I love going to work and it's fun. And I think it's really important to be interested in what you do and be around people that are interesting and make the case for fun at work. And I think that's really important. I think that's what sustains me, and I think that's what in many ways and I think it gets to what everybody's saying, values led, what's your personal value, what are your personal drivers, but also just the idea that you go to work and at 9 in the morning and leave at 5 is over. We are living and breathing what we do all the time, and we do it in unconventional ways, and as long as we stay true to the purpose, then I think we're winning.
All right, great answers. Thank you so much to everybody on the panel, and thank you everyone for being here and the excellent questions from the audience as well, and to the Sydney School of Entrepreneurship. So thank you.